McMullen's appearance on the show brought to you by Harrah's Resort, Bally's, Atlantic City, Wild Wild West. They're taking their bets, your bets now at the new sports book. Break up with your bookie and wager today at the book. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. A lot to get into here on the Sports Bash with McMullen. We saw Carolina lose last night in impressive fashion, if you will. It's impressive to lose by 30 in the NFL.
Yeah, it was so bad.
When you're a 6-win team and you lose by 30, that's impressive.
Jeez. Pittsburgh just stomped them.
Last night, another successful Mosher, McMullen, and Krause show. And John McMullen joins us here from 97.3 ESPN.com. We just had Drew Pearson on. He said if he suited up on Sunday, the Eagles would have to slant the field towards him. That's how limited they are on offense, the Cowboys.
And Drew pushed off all those years ago against the Vikings.
Right. That's how he said.
That's
how limited.
Slant the field.
He said that's how limited they are on offense. They would have to slant the field towards him if he suited up.
Well, I do think. Look, they've had some major issues at that position. No question about it. When Cole Beasley is your most dynamic player. And I've criticized them for giving up a first-round pick that might end up being a top 10 pick for Amari Cooper. I think when you frame it from that standpoint, it's an awful trade. But from the perspective of he's a heck of a lot better than what they had.
Yeah,
that's true as well. And Amari Cooper is a guy you have to pay attention to. He's got a lot of talent. His issues deal with consistency and things of that nature. But he's a lot better than what they had. And the Eagles have to be concerned, especially this week, where Jalen Mills is out, Sidney Jones is out. We're going to have all these moving parts in the secondary.
We were debating this beforehand. So the year Romo gets hurt, Dak comes in and plays relatively well, gets him to the playoffs. If Dak didn't play well, would Romo he was still signed through 2019. Would Romo still be the quarterback of the Cowboys?
I don't think so because of the injuries, and they were coming fast and furious with Tony. I think that was the issue, not the fact that he couldn't play. And then ultimately, obviously, he got a great job, and he's very good at it. So you have to give him credit from that standpoint, just the natural in the booth. But I think the injuries were too much. I mean, he never would have left the field to begin with if that wasn't the issue. Mm-hmm. But if you're asking, he's a much better quarterback than Dak Prescott. And he's really an underrated guy, I think. He didn't at times didn't have great supporting casts, both offensively and defensively. Interesting, though, you mentioned the show last night. We had Marcus Mosher on.
I heard that.
No relation to Jeff Mosher, at least Jeff claims. But he had mentioned they're running the same offense with Tony Romo and Dak Prescott. I don't think that's 100% accurate, but that kind of tells you. I mean, that's dereliction of duty. You got one guy who's just...
I actually was in the car listening to that exact... I actually tweeted it out, and the funny part is the amount of Cowboy retweets and likes that we got last night was pretty humorous.
Yeah, I mean, as I kind of said on the show, I mean, you got to blame somebody for that. But they're two completely different quarterbacks. One has a tremendous... You can just watch any telecast, has a tremendous understanding of what's going on the field at all times. They should have been able to take advantage of that better. And the one, Dak Prescott does some unique things as far as obviously read option, zone read, and bringing his legs into the equation. They're obviously not taking advantage of it. But this season, that's easier said than done because they got no weapons on the outside until Amari Cooper gets there, and he's only been there for a week, and this will be week 2. So it should be a little bit better, but they need more talent at the skill position, outside running back, of course, where they're very good.
Well, breaking news just in. Dez Bryant tore his Achilles on his first day of practice with the Saints. So people who like that move, he doesn't appear that he is going to help the Saints now. Dez Bryant torn Achilles, and it looks like he is now done for 1 day. That's the best season. Did he get paid for that?
It's a shame.
Yeah, he gets paid, which Darren Sproles like he's there for less than 24 hours, but they think they're going to have him. Obviously, a much more serious injury. That could be it for Dez Bryant.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't really excited about that signing. I know I've said it a lot on the show. You guys have heard me say it. People get excited over the name. We know how things quickly change. He was at one time a top 5 wide receiver in this league, no doubt. He was an all-pro. He's not that guy. And everybody, for some reason, thinks everybody remains in stasis. I mean, Dez Bryant is not Dez Bryant all-pro.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy who lacks explosion, and I don't think he was going to help the Saints that much anyway. But it is sad that on his first day back, he tore his Achilles.
Yeah, John. On that note, you mentioned and wrote about it today. Did Doug Pederson sound optimistic that we could see Sproles back at some point this year?
Yeah, he said he expects him back at some point. You have to be questioning. If you look at it, he got hurt week 1. We're at week 10, so that's 9 weeks. If it's a similar hamstring injury, not going to be back in the regular season. But from the standpoint of cautious, it seemed strange that a hamstring would take that long. Typically, they don't take 9 weeks to heal. So they were being overly cautious. I think a lot of people criticized that, or they didn't believe that it was simply a hamstring strain, and maybe there was something more serious. Either way, though, he comes back 1 day of practice and he aggravates it, and he's back on the shelf. And he's 35 years old. I mean, that plays into it. And as I said, it's not a coincidence that you have all these soft tissue injuries with players like Darren Sproles and Jason Peters and Corey Graham and Haloti Ngata. I mean, it's pretty evident that when you get to this over 30 in this league, there's going to be some issues.
John, something I didn't realize that I heard earlier today, Carson Wentz has fumbled in every single game that he's played in this year. And I didn't realize that. It surprised me a little bit. Listen, I know a lot of that isn't his fault, but nonetheless, it's happened. So how does that trend stop? And, how is Doug going to help relieve some of that pressure that he's putting on his shoulders?
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at them individually, but I also think in a larger fashion, that's something you're probably going to have to live with. You don't want to fumble every game, but just the way Carson plays and the fact that he always wants to extend things and try to make big plays. There's give and take there, good and bad, and a lot of times you end up with the explosive play. But there are other times where you might get the forced fumble. Now, there are other issues as well. I mean, if you look at the Tennessee game, for instance, and the Minnesota game, back-to-back, it was Lane Johnson getting beat, and that's just sort of Carson not seeing the edge rush immediately getting, and that's just the hit where the football comes out. So I think it's individually they're different, but him as a whole and all guys, you see this with Ben Roethlisberger, who does a lot of the same things and tries to extend plays, and he's this big, strong guy, and you're going to see strip sacks at times with players like that.
Does that have anything to do with Doug's play calling, like the lack of running the ball and maybe the pressure that Carson's feeling of needing to make a big play or knowing that he's not going to be handing it off much or hasn't been? Or is that just two different things?
No, I don't think. I think it has to do with Carson more than anything else. It's just his DNA. I think the opposite probably. If he had less opportunities to throw the ball, he'd be pressing more to make plays. I mean, he's just a guy who always thinks he can make the play. And that's something, it's a fine line. And you don't want to discourage him from doing some of the things that makes him who he is. And at the same time, you do hope he learns as he gets more and more experience under his belt and understands that on occasion it's better to live to play another down, so to speak, and maybe throw the football away, even take a sack on occasion. But I would rather have the guy who can make plays.
Absolutely.
And that's what the Eagles believe with Carson Wentz.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
John McMullen here on the Sports Bash Boardwalk Honda Hotline at JF McMullen on Twitter. So no Sidney Jones, no Jalen Mills, John. What are we going to see in the Eagles secondary?
Well, Doug, and no surprise here with the theme of competitive advantage all year is not let on, and obviously Jim Schwartz earlier in the week, how they're going to handle the nickel back slot. It's pretty clear Ronald Darby's going to flip over to the left side where Jalen Mills typically plays. Rasul Douglas is going to play right corner. And then it depends what they want to do at the slot. Ultimately, I think they're going to put Avonte Maddox down there because Corey Graham will be back, and he will play safety next to Malcolm Jenkins. The other option would be Cre'Von LeBlanc, love saying that name, who's a slot corner they picked up on waivers. And, hey, with Dexter McDougal, they threw him right in there, right off the street. But difference there is he had experience in this defense. He was on the team for a long time last year before being cut, and LeBlanc doesn't have any experience in this defense. So that's why I think it's going to be Avonte Maddox in the slot and Corey Graham at safety.
And I get it. They don't have an explosive pass game, but with the running game, Ezekiel Elliott here, the one fear I have is them, slipping the ball to him on the screens and some missed tackles and seeing a couple of big plays like that. That to me is the one fear that I have with this Dallas team is Zeke's pretty good at slipping out of tackles, and the Eagles have not tackled nearly as well this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a tough guy to tackle even when you are tackling well. But I think, they are so one-dimensional from their standpoint. They hope it gets better with Cooper at some point. But that's still going to be a work in progress. I think, the Cowboys have to get a lead in this game, and they have to play with the lead. If they get down, say 10-0, I think it's over. They're just not equipped to come back. So I think from their standpoint, they want to get the ball. They want to get the lead. Everybody defers in this league when they win the toss. I'm not sure Jason Garrett has any power, but if I do win the toss, I want the football. And what they want to do is shorten the game and have a long drive, maybe an 8-9 minute drive, score a touchdown, take the lead. I don't think they're smart enough to do that, even if they get the opportunity. I don't see, we just passed Election Day, and everybody talks in politics about path to victory. I don't see any for the Cowboys, except that they gotta shorten the game, they gotta run the football, and they gotta play with the lead because they're just not equipped to come from behind.
And they do have a good defense. You look at their defense. Where is there a spot that worries you on the Eagle offense going against that defense?
Well, hey, they're a top 5 defense for people that don't realize it. They're 4th in total defense, 3rd in scoring defense. And they've got, as I wrote today on 973ESPN.com, they got difference makers at every level. My biggest concern is DeMarcus Lawrence for a couple of reasons. One, he's a really good player. 2, Lane Johnson is going to play. It's listed as questionable, but he's banged up. And the typical guy is not going to play with a grade 2 MCL sprain. So he's not going to be 100%. So you have to keep an eye on him. A, is he going to be healthy enough to be effective? And then B, if he's not and he can't go, and I have to go to Halapula Vati Vaitai against DeMarcus Lawrence. We just talked about strip sacks. That's a strip sack waiting to happen.
Yeah. And Ryan mentioned the propensity for Wentz to fumble the ball. Those are the kind of things. The ugly game like the Tennessee game. Now, if you get up 17-3 or 17-0, you got to close this game out. You can't blow 3 of them this year, but that's the type of game. The Tennessee game, the Carolina game. The Carolina game less because they had a lot of long drives. I don't know that Dallas has that in them. But the Tennessee game, I could see more reminiscent being a potential way that they could get you.
Well, I think it would have to be something you would have to have a play they're going to have to score on defense, maybe on special teams. Something hinky has to happen for them to win this game. I think if the
hinky,
Eagles
I
play,
like that.
Trust the process.
It is. Well, I didn't mean Sam, but it works in both ways. But I think something has to happen. I don't think if the Eagles play a clean game, the Cowboys can beat them at home. But, hey, this league is – and we know, you saw it, you mentioned Tennessee. Marcus Mariota's done it a couple times. That's a bad offense. But even a bad offense, if they're having a good day, can do some things in this league because everything's geared towards the offense.
John, I want your opinion on a discussion that Mike and I were having earlier about Golden Tate. And listen, we know that the Eagles' offense is better automatically with Golden Tate on the field. It's just he's another weapon. He's relieving pressure from Carson. We all know what he brings. But how does Doug and the rest of the coaching staff and the Eagles figure out the ideal formula where Golden Tate's successful, but so is Nelson Aguilar, so is Alshon Jeffrey, so is Zach Ertz still, and ideally the running game. Like I don't want to see, all right, the Eagles are better now because of Golden Tate, but Nelson Aguilar dropped off. The run game still isn't there. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do they get everything clicking?
I mean, there's only one football.
Yeah.
I remember when I was working in Minnesota, the Vikings had if you guys remember, Chester Taylor, who was a 1,200-yard rusher, and they had the opportunity. Adrian Peterson fell in the draft, and he fell to him, and they took Adrian Peterson, and everybody's saying, what about Chester Taylor? And I said, F Chester Taylor.
Talking about the running back Chester Taylor?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the point is, if you get a better player, you got a better player. And that's what I'm not comparing Golden Tate to Adrian Peterson,
sure,
but I'm just giving that as an example. Yes, Nelson Aguilar is not going to be as effective because Golden Tate is going to do some of the things that he does. And all of a sudden you have that three-headed monster in the receiving game that you want. But it's going to be Golden Tate. It's going to be Alshon Jeffrey. It's going to be Zach Ertz. And excuse my French, but F Nelson Aguilar.
Right.
He's a nice guy, but he's not the same player as Golden Tate. And that's just it.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's only one football,
yeah,
and it can only go in so many different directions. And then, as I mentioned on the show last night, you got to be realistic about this running game. I know everybody wants to run the football. I know everybody wants more balance. But let's be honest. Let's look at how this team is built. And let's look at Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz and even Dallas Goedert and now Golden Tate and Nelson Aguilar versus Wendell Smallwood and Corey Clement and Josh Adams. Who do you want the football in the hands of? To me, it's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
You want it in the hands of your best players, and that means the passing game. And even if the passing game is an extension of the running game with some of the manufactured touches that perhaps you can get Golden Tate involved in.
All right, we got the this game for Philly. I don't mathematically not must win, but if you want to be a playoff team, get a game, maybe win the division. This is the game you got to have and bury this Cowboys team, put them kind of out of it. And then you saw Carolina lose last night, John. You know, it brought them back to the pack a little bit, with their third loss. So it made some things interesting. But This is the kind of game that I think for Philly, it shouldn't be a hard-fought game. This is the kind of game I think you win 35-10, something like that, right?
Yeah, I had it 30-17, and that's probably, I think the Eagles are finally going to score more than they have been, and I think it is going to be a pretty easy game, at least it should be for them. Dallas is trending in the wrong direction, as you mentioned. I mean, there's so many issues. We talked on the field issues, but off the field with everybody wants Jason Garrett out there. The Jerry Jones pushing his agenda onto the coaching staff. They fire the offensive line coach. They have a defensive coordinator that doesn't call defensive plays now. They did the same thing to Jason Garrett, took it away from him. Just such dysfunction. And then you have an offense that doesn't have playmakers and has a quarterback who's struggling. I mean, yeah, this would be a devastating loss for the Eagles. It'd
just be hard to take them serious.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, this is on a tee. This is as easy as it gets in this league. Now, it is the NFL, and we see it all the time. There's upsets. It's not like college football where Alabama's playing some nothing school, and you know 100% how the game's going to go. Anybody can beat you in this league, but this is as easy as it's going to get. It really is.
All right, John likes the Eagles big. You'll hear it all right here Sunday night. Countdown to kickoff coverage starts at 5 p.m. live at the Rusty Nail in Cape May. That'll lead you into Merrill and Mike. They'll have the call 8:20 with the kick. John McMullen will be there, and you can check it all out at 973ESPN.com. Thanks, John.
Hey, thanks, guys.